All right, it got quiet, so I guess that's my cue to start. I didn't even have to prompt anybody to quiet down. So I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening and thank you for making time out of your Monday evening to come visit with and listen to our second Casper College Community Learning Series presentation. I'm going to start just the way that I started last time, just to kick this off. So again, my name is Brandon Cosey, and I'm the president of Casper College, and it is my privilege to welcome you this evening. This series was born out of the many discussions and questions I was hearing in the community by our concerned citizens. It is designed as a forum for learning, questions, and discovery. As a community college, part of our mission is to bring people together to explore important topics in a spirit of curiosity and respect. We believe in the power of education to spark new ideas, broaden perspectives, and help us understand the world more deeply. This is an academic setting, and with that comes a commitment to fact-based inquiry and information. That means our discussions here are grounded in evidence, research, and knowledge, not personal opinions, partisan politics, or ideological debates. While those may have a place in other venues, our role here is to provide clarity, promote understanding, and encourage thoughtful exploration. We also want to emphasize that inquiry is at the heart of education. Asking questions, seeking better understanding, and wrestling with complex issues are a part of what it means to be a learner. In this space, we invite you to approach each topic with openness and respect, recognizing that discovery often begins with curiosity and a willingness to learn. Thank you again for being a part of this event. Your participation helps strengthen our mission as a community college, which is to be a hub of knowledge, dialogue, and lifelong learning for everyone in our community. We're glad you're here. We'll be asking for your feedback at the end of this evening to help us decide on and craft future topics for each of our learning series, and we hope to give one of these about once every 4 to 6 weeks. So after every one of these, please stay tuned for the next topic. And what we're really trying to do is figure out what the issues are that are during that time and do kind of just-in-time learning for all of this so that our citizens can have accurate information in a timely manner when we're making decisions as citizens of our state. And so now I will turn it over to Sean Straub, who is the Nuclear Industry Coordinator with the Wyoming Energy Authority.
All right. Thank you very much. Howdy, folks. Thanks for being out here. Just want to reiterate what President Kosing said here. A lot of things you could be doing tonight, I'm sure. So thanks for being here to talk about one of my very favorite things, which is nuclear supply chain and manufacturing. So very excited to have Mike Wandler and Brian Steinert here with us today, representing two of the finest manufacturing companies in the state. So I'm going to kind of start with a couple opening remarks. I'm going to introduce myself and the Wyoming Energy Authority and kind of what we do. We'll hear from our panelists here for a brief minute, and then I'm going to kind of set the scene a little bit, energy landscape and the nuclear landscape more broadly, and that supply chain. I know, I saw him here, Wayne. Good to see you. Had done one of these here a couple weeks back where he kind of did a bit more of the Nuclear 101 stuff, so I'll try to brush past as much of that as I can real quickly, but we do want to set the stage before we start to kind of dive in, and we're going to focus on the manufacturing supply chain in particular and what kind of opportunities we're looking at that exist for our businesses here in Wyoming. So like I said, my name is Sean Schaub. I am the Nuclear Industry Coordinator for the Wyoming Energy Authority. I grew up in Riverton, Wyoming, so I'm a Wyomingite, born and bred. Lived here in Casper for a handful of years. Post-college, I got my geology degree at the University of Wyoming. And kind of my initial interest in nuclear energy and why I became so passionate and was really excited to take on this role really started in an ore deposits class in my geology program. And really related to one thing, and that is energy density. And when you are looking at the history of our energy systems over time and the way that they've developed and changed and things, as we've had larger demands growing and larger population and technological advancements, that energy density is a really important thing. And so that's what kind of initially drew me into this sector, and where I got my start in uranium mining for Cameco Resources, which some of you might know has a really important mine not too far from here. So I worked at the Smith Ranch mine to kind of get started there, and then did a number of things in supply chain and manufacturing consulting related work, and then found myself here. So that's just a little bit about me. Now the Wyoming Energy Authority was formed back in 2020, and this was basically we had three pre-existing organizations: the Pipeline Authority, the Infrastructure Authority, and the State Energy Office. And what the legislature did was essentially put all those under one roof, and so that's what formed the Wyoming Energy Authority. And our mission is simply to advance Wyoming's energy and mineral resources. So we have folks in our office that cover every aspect of that: our fossil fuel industry, our transmission and electricity markets, and all of that, nuclear. And so we cover a bit of everything, and really we are focused on a more is more approach right now. In particular, as we'll get into a little bit here in a bit, the energy demand domestically is for the first time in many decades expanding quite substantially, and represents an opportunity, especially for a state like Wyoming that is a significant energy player. So that is the Energy Authority. Now I'm going to kick it over to, we'll start with Brian. Brian, if you could just introduce yourself, give a quick background, and then tell us a little bit about HiViz.
Yeah. So my name is Brian Steinert. I'm representing HiViz today. We're a manufacturer in Laramie, Wyoming. Our main manufacturing is firearm sights. With that, we do metal injection molding, CNC manufacturing. I was brought into HiViz 3-ish years ago as a process engineer. I have a mechanical degree, and so brought in, try to help improve our metal injection molding process at HiViz, and then trying to diversify in a few other markets. That's where we kind of got into the nuclear space. So.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Brian, and thank you for being here. Appreciate it. And Mike Wandler, same question to you.
Yeah, I'm Mike Wandler. I'm the president and an owner of L&H Industrial. L&H Industrial was started in 1964 by my dad, Leon Wandler, in Gillette, just a small town machine shop. I bought it from him in '98, and now we're into the third generation, so I'm the end of the second generation. We got the third generation teed up. It's 100% closely privately held and Wyoming based, headquarters in Gillette. We have an incredible shop in Sheridan, one in Phoenix, Arizona. We manufacture parts for the biggest machines on earth. So it started out in oil field, and then we moved to the coal fields. I took it global. Me and my brother and a few others took it global starting in 2000. So now we do about 120 million. Half of that's exports. 90% of that's out of Wyoming. We're still growing, diversifying. We're 60 years in. I'm preparing for the next 60 years to keep it Wyoming based and closely privately held, and I see no reason we can't keep growing it at 10 to 20% a year, and haven't found it to be a barrier to be manufacturing in Wyoming. As far as myself, I've been there for 40 years. I started out, like most small companies do, started out sweeping the floor and worked my way up through. I was president and an owner of it by the time I was 30, about 57 now. And got sons and nephews that are owners with me, and got about 250 people in L&H in the U.S., another 250 internationally. We have shops in Mexico, we have shops in Chile. We've had shops all over the world. We sell to every major mining company in the world. We're into engineering, manufacturing, repair, field service, systems and controls, and Internet of Things. We have an Ops IQ app now that we're pushing, and then AI. So now we're bringing AI to all of our crusher friends, shovels, drag lines, and and space. So we got into space quite a few years ago. The NASA crawler transporter has an L&H undercarriage under it, and we upgraded it to carry the SLS rocket. That's the new heavy rocket. So all of the rollers under that were built in Gillette and Sheridan. We sent field crews down to Kennedy Space Center, tore it apart, remachined it, put our parts back on it, and that's our machine. So if you have a problem with that machine, you call L&H and Gillette, and we take care of it. Last year, we built the flame trench for NASA. So that flame that SLS rocket has shooting down, that goes down into a pit, shoots out into the ocean. That's an L&H flame trench that's coming off of. So we do lots of fun stuff like that. But we're in oil and gas, coal. We love coal, wind, hydro, space. I talked about railroad, copper, gold, and now nuclear. I decided 5 years ago that my life's purpose is now to innovate energy. And the most innovative energy that I can think of for my customers, which are heavy industrial and mineral processing customers globally, is microreactors. So I've been, if you want to blame somebody for trying to bring microreactors to Wyoming, I'm your guy. I found it, I wanted to bring it in. There is no supply chain for microreactors in the world. So it's one of these rare chances that Wyoming has to say, hey, we want to build all those parts for your microreactors. So I've got a Wyoming Innovative Entrepreneurs that I set up to help grow and diversify Wyoming's economy at the request of the governor. I spent 8 years on the business council. And a business council for an entrepreneur is kind of like, any council is kind of like kryptonite. It just doesn't work, right? Every time you come up with a good idea, they throw rules at you that stop you from being able to do that good idea. So to help grow it, I created Wyoming Innovative Entrepreneurs, and I've got about, we've got 30 or 40 entrepreneurs from around the state that we're helping grow and diversify their economy, which grows and diversifies the state economy. So my dream is to be able to get 3 quotes for any part on a reactor, and microreactors especially, but even SMRs or the large reactors, and anything else that helps grow and diversify Wyoming's economy. So my dream of innovative energy has brought me to fission products and microreactors, but it's really all of the above. If you're in the energy business, don't worry about what I'm doing. If you're in the energy business, you're good. You're going to be good for a long time. It's growing. So all of the above, and what else? So with that, I created a company called Evercore Energy, so that when I buy these microreactors, which I'm going to be agnostic to whose microreactor, I just want the best one that fits my mining customer or my mineral processing customer. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to lease that energy to that customer, probably a global customer, but that's my big vision. It's kind of crazy. It's 5 or 10 years out, but that one alone could set Wyoming up, Wyoming's economy up, Wyoming's tax base up for the next 100 to 1,000 years. But anyway, I know that's not what we're talking about.
Great. No, well, thank you for that. Yes, so we're going to hear a lot more from both of these gentlemen here in a minute. I'm just going to kind of take a few minutes to sort of set the scene a little bit and kind of let you know how we are viewing, the energy landscape and more specifically the nuclear landscape. So, as I kind of mentioned earlier, for the past, many decades, energy demand has been pretty flat in the U.S. at about 0.5% of growth per year. As you've likely seen in the news, as you're reading about data centers and this and that, there is a lot of demand cropping up now. Depending on sort of which estimates you look at, I've landed anywhere from sort of 2.5 to 4% per year growth, which is a pretty big increase when you're deploying systems that take a long time to build historically. And so this, as I said, the headlines are all sort of about data centers providing that demand growth, but that's not the only thing. Manufacturing growth is finally occurring here in the U.S., which I think is a good thing that a lot of us would like to see. That is driving a lot of that demand growth. General electrification, you're hearing a lot about that. But also, I think it's worth noting that we also just have a lot of aging infrastructure around the country. So a lot of our energy systems, coal plants, gas plants, nuclear plants, transmission infrastructure, I mean, across the board was built in the 60s and 70s. It's getting old, and it's going to have to be replaced at some point. So that's sort of the landscape that we're looking at more broadly, just around our energy needs. And so, you know, my focus is specifically on trying to find opportunities in the nuclear landscape in particular for the state of Wyoming. And so, you know, this is driven, you know, I'll say we had, Representative Alleman, we had a lot of action around here this summer, right? There's a lot of dialogue around this. And it certainly seems like this nuclear conversation is happening fast, right? That's kind of how it seems. You're reading in the news, you're seeing all this happening. But I'll just note, you know, this has been a bipartisan and bicameral supported topic going back at least to the Obama administration. And it hasn't mattered, you know, which party is in the White House at any given time. It's had consistent support over that duration, and there's you know, there's sort of separate reasons for that on either side of the aisle. But the main reason, I think, is it's recognized as, and again, it's going back to that, the fundamental physics of that energy density equation. And so, very simply speaking, you can do a lot with very little as it applies to the fuel, the cement, the land usage, all of those things. And so that's driven, I think, a lot of the support. And so if you're here a few weeks ago when Wayne was giving his presentation, you'll know that you know, currently, today, about 19% of the U.S.'s electricity generation is provided by nuclear power plants. So we've got about 94 currently operating plants. That figure is always sort of in flux. There's a number of reactors being restarted, which is something new, but that energy demand is driving those restarts. Mike might have a specific example around those opportunities here later, but and then, you know, the other thing that really is important to note about, you know, nuclear power reactors is the capacity factor. And so, you know, this didn't happen overnight, but, you know, today, as we've learned how to operate these plants and we've gotten really good at the refueling outages and things, nuclear power plants on average in this country are a little over 93% capacity factor, which more or less what that means is they are running full bore all the time, which is fantastic. And that's about double, not quite, almost double the next closest energy generating assets capacity factor. So it's really important when you talk about dispatchable baseload power. That's the takeaway there. You know, kind of just some other high-level things, and we don't need to get too in-depth into this, but we're seeing, I mean, just significant investment into this sector, both by, again, several administrations back and from the federal government, the Loan Programs Office, Department of Energy, investing in various pieces of this nuclear supply chain, reactors, so on and so forth. But also kind of the big new piece of this finance side of things right now is you know, the tech companies. So Google, Meta, Amazon, all of these companies are investing significant resources from their companies into nuclear specifically, and that's because they need really reliable power. So that's kind of what they're looking at. And then we're also seeing a lot of investment from states specifically competing over these opportunities to bring these type of businesses and companies to their state. So I've just kind of noted a couple of them that were you know, pretty significant. The state of Texas just appropriated $350 million to their nuclear specific energy fund, which they're setting up a cabinet right now that is dedicated to nuclear development, and they're going to start leveraging that money to incentivize projects to come to Texas. Same for Tennessee. They've got a $70 million fund. The state of Utah has been very vocal about their ambitions around nuclear. Kentucky, Ohio was the announcement today, another $100 million fund. So this is pretty significant across the country. So that's kind of, you know, just the landscape at a brief snapshot. Now, the piece that I'm particularly focused on in my role right now is the nuclear supply chain. And again, if you'll remember from Wayne kind of stole my thunder, I guess, on a lot of these things. But if you'll remember, and I won't go into depth on these, but there's, the nuclear fuel cycle is a pretty specific beast. We mine the uranium, we have to mill it, basically produce yellow cake, which is what the state of Wyoming has a long history of doing. Here, I think, the last number I saw, since starting in the 50s, we've produced about 238 million pounds out of Wyoming. So the gas hills back in the day was obviously a really prolific site for that. And we've got several mines now back in operation with the economics the way they are. It's finally favorable again, and we're seeing that activity, which is really great to see. But what I'm particularly excited is finding those opportunities to add more value within the state to that resource that we extract. And so those next couple of supply chain activities there are conversion, in which you take that yellow cake product and you basically have to convert it into a gaseous form to be able to go into centrifuge technology that is the enrichment part. And those two pieces are, those are big industrial sort of operations, largely chemical operations. And currently, the problem in our domestic landscape is we have one conversion facility, again, quite old. I think it was built 70s, 60s-ish. That's in Illinois. That's the Converdine plant. And we have pretty much one commercial enrichment facility in New Mexico. And that is owned by basically a collection of foreign countries. And there is one U.S.-based technology that is in Ohio that is sort of growing up. To date, they've only kind of demonstrated more or less pilot scale capacity, but they're continuing to grow. But all that to say, those are really critical pieces of not only talking about the growth in the sector, but for our currently existing fleet that as I mentioned, produces 20% of our electricity. So, I mean, on the conversion piece alone, there are some Idaho National Lab figures that show that we basically have about 15%, 1/5, of the conversion capacity that we need for our currently operating fleet. And so what that means is we're bringing in a lot of those services from other countries. And you're probably familiar, most notably, those are historically been from Russia. We, for decades had kind of let that whole supply chain atrophy here in the U.S., and Russia and others took the opposite approach and really developed that into a vertically integrated state-backed machine, more or less. So that's something that we have a big opportunity to take more of our own future, I guess, into our hands, to kind of put it a little high level there. And then, after you've got enrichment, you have to deconvert it from that gaseous form back into a solid, and then you fabricate fuel after that, which goes to our operating fleet. And then what we're going to kind of dive into a little bit more specifically here is on, outside of that fuel cycle, there's also the manufacturing supply chain that we have to address. That is another piece of this business that we've let go elsewhere. So there are, quite literally for the big pressure vessels and things like that, for large gigawatt scale plants, basically 2 countries in the world that possess that capacity. So the U.S. Most recently works with South Korea and Japan on those, which is a fine relationship right now. But again, I think we would like to have a bit more of that capacity here domestically. So again, to kind of wrap all that up, as I'm kind of paying really close attention to this industry and kind of watching how this is all developed, we are, I don't want to be too hyperbolic about it, but we have a very unique opportunity in time to take advantage of the policy landscape, the financing landscape, the energy demand landscape, sort of all coalescing around this particular point in time. and Wyoming has been positioned in a leading role to attract a lot of this to the state. And so, that kind of brings me to my job and how I'm viewing this at the WEA. We're taking a very holistic approach to the opportunities, and several years ago, my predecessor in this role, they had developed a strategic framework around nuclear industry development, and that's what we work off of today. And that is largely addressing those pieces that I mentioned. So there's kind of the grid scale connected nuclear generation, which is evidenced by TerraPower's project over in Kemmer. So that is going along nicely and was really a powerful catalyst in starting this conversation in the state. But we're looking at those supply chain opportunities that I mentioned, including our manufacturing supply chain. And then there's also sort of the value chain component of it. And so the example we have of that is we're working with a company who has been working for a couple years now with our trona producers down near Green River and Rock Springs. And those are, as you're probably all well aware, those are significant mines, and one of I think it is our largest export. But they require a lot of process heat in particular, in addition to their electricity needs. And so they're working with this reactor developer that can supply the very specific heat needs that they require, along with some of that electricity generation. So that's another piece that we've been kind of working on. Anyways, I will stop blathering because we want to hear from these guys more. So now that we've kind of set the scene for that energy landscape and the nuclear industry growth, I want to kind of get into some of the specifics that they've been seeing in their respective companies that historically have not been oriented around nuclear power at all. And so I guess we'll start with Mike. So Mike, do you want to just give kind of some background on how L&H got involved in this industry to begin with, how you kind of approach that, and then sort of where things stand currently for you guys?
Yeah, how I got involved in it is Peter Diamandis with Abundance 360 was talking about energy, and he was always saying he was very leaning towards wind and solar, and then one year when he would come across his nuclear stuff, he'd say, we're not doing that. And then one year he changed to it's the only answer. So I went up to him after that Abundance 360 conference and I said, well, what changed? What's the deal? And he said, well, wind and solar aren't going to get us there. And if we care about carbon, the only answer is nuclear. So I got interested in it, and at that time, Wyoming had brought in TerraPower. So I talked to the governor, and he introduced me to the people at TerraPower, and I started seeing, the energy density you were talking about, and I was like, wow, that's really compelling. So that's how I got into it, and then shortly thereafter I decided my life's purpose was to innovate energy and help these folks bring the supply chain back up while I was helping everybody else with their energy that they bring to the table too. And back then, that was 4 or 5 years ago, no other state was playing. That's why TerraPower's here, because the other states were throwing rocks at them. So now they're here, and now all the other states are trying to jump into. So getting into the manufacturing, because that's what I do, was interesting, because I'm always looking at diversifying manufacturing. If you're in manufacturing, you have to look for the next thing. Where's the margins? Because there's always people coming and nipping at your heels. If you're making any money, there's going to be somebody, and I've been in it for 40 years, there's always somebody working for you or some competitor that's trying to take your profit margin, and so you have to move on constantly. So this was just me looking at where is the next move that nobody else is in, that has a moat built around it, so it's hard for other people to enter, and we can use our skills and expertise and our passion to go into that, and that was nuclear. And it was actually nuclear for Wyoming, because Wyoming has a really high energy IQ to the rest of the country. And we saw it before the rest of the country did that, nuclear's fits, and we need it here. And I'm a manufacturer, so it makes sense for me to focus on the manufacturing side of it. And when you look at a reactor, it's a lot of pipes and tubes. So it doesn't fit me as much as it fits a lot of these other shops around here. You've got shops like Hyco that does pipes and tubes and pressure vessels, right? it fits a lot of these other shops really well. So why does it fit me? Because I've got ISO 9001, 2015. I'm working for NASA. I'm working for people that have a really high quality expectation and documentation expectation. So I already have a lot of those disciplines built into my company. So although it's a stretch, it's not as much of a stretch for me to do parts. It's the same parts. The parts really aren't different than these other things. It's just a way higher bar to clear. And we're at a point in our life where it's like, hey, we think we can clear that bar, and we'd be interested in doing that, right? So that kind of brings us into it, and then talking to other people in the state. There's other people that can also do the same thing. And when you're in the rest of I've got shops in the rest of the country. I thought when I bought my shop in Phoenix that my problems are over. I have 6 million people to draw from. I won't have any talent problems. I have a much easier time finding talent in Wyoming than I do in Phoenix, Arizona, because there's work ethic here, and people still like to build things and make things. So it just dawned on me that, hey, let's just set this whole supply chain up in Wyoming. You know, Wyoming's lack of people, the 500,000 people we have, used to be a real barrier to manufacturing. Well, now technology has made that to where you don't need a lot of people to do manufacturing. You can do manufacturing with a lot fewer people than you used to have. So all of a sudden, Wyoming's in the game, right? Just, you got to bring tech. You got to wrap your people in tech. But you can manufacture things and sell them anywhere in the world as long as they're high value items, right? As long as they have a lot of margin. So how do you figure out which things those are? If freight is not even a thing the customer worries about, okay, now that fits Wyoming, right? If they're worried about what the cost of freight is, whether you're competitive or not, it doesn't fit Wyoming. You got to take it nearer to the customer, right? So I don't know if that was what you were looking for.
Yeah,
but
no, that's great. Brian, so same question for you, and yours is a little more unique because, I mean, how in the world does a firearm site manufacturer get sort of involved in the nuclear supply chain?
Yeah, it's interesting, like, to hear these two guys talk. Like, we're very fledgling into this nuclear industry, so a lot of the things that they're communicating that are second nature to them and maybe some of you are not to us. We are a manufacturer, so to manufacture things, we can do that. Doesn't matter if it's a firearm site, doesn't matter if it's something for nuclear. I mean, we can do that, but like Mike said, the bar is that much higher from a quality standpoint. And so basically what happened with us was, you know, we looked at our manufacturing tools, we looked at metal injection molding, we looked at CNC, and it's like, where can we diversify? And we just found a conference through Manufacturing Works, I think, and maybe the Wyoming Energy Authority. And there was one in Cheyenne, and then there was one in Laramie, and it was with the company BWXT. And they had a laundry list of things that they needed. It was concrete, it was pipe, and there was one line on there that was graphite machining. We machine small 3-inch cube blocks of graphite for our EDM, for our tool making, for our molding. And we're like, well, we can machine graphite. It wasn't, I mean, 2 to 4 months later, and we had a PO from BWXT for machining 2-foot square blocks of graphite. And so that was our segue into this industry, was just going to a couple conferences. It was like, hey, we can do this. And all of a sudden it was on quite a bit larger scale from a volume side. And then so we're continuing to work. Maybe there's other things we can do in the nuclear space, and that's kind of where we're at. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that was pretty exciting. Maybe you can just touch on, well, one, I'll brag on your company a little bit for you, because as I was, you know, working with the supply chain folks at BWXT on this project, they had the block, the graphite blocks that he mentioned that were one thing, but they had a pretty challenging part made from graphite. There was this sleeve. So it's a real thin walled, just a circle basically. But as I understand, I'm not a manufacturer myself, but as I understand, it's a pretty challenging thing with that type of material to manufacture. So I had heard that the BWXT engineers on the inside had kind of some friendly wagers going on as to whether or not they could pull it off. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not a public speaker. I'm an engineer. So it's like remembering things and being vocal and all of that. But anyway, like we machined 2 parts for them, a total of 16 parts, but 2 different geometries. One of which was that 2-foot square block, 4 inches thick, with a variety of holes in it. We don't know what this is. Drawing is slid across, and it's like, make this. Here's the tolerances. Go. Like, okay, let's do that. But then that sleeve was thrown out, and it was, I believe it was like 18 inches in diameter, and 5 millimeters thick, 4 inches tall, of graphite. And so, I'm not in the CNC room. My background is metal injection molding. So to see the guys make that was pretty impressive, and to see the techniques that were used in order to make that was very impressive. And to speak to BWXT, they told us, they said, we're not sure if this can be manufactured. And they did a tour of our facility. They came out, they looked at a few things, and after getting into some conversations with them, that was exactly said. They're like, well, we'll see if you can actually do it. We've got bets going on. And like, that's pretty cool to take on a project like that where you're making firearm sights, and then to be able to machine that, it's a good pat on the back. So
Yeah, so moral of the story, don't bet against Wyoming manufacturers.
that's right. Yeah.
Great. So whoever kind of wants to take this first, what are some of the challenges in entering this industry? How's it similar to, Mike, you work a lot in the energy business at large. How's it similar to those? How's it different? What's, what makes it particularly challenging to enter?
Yeah, so I've been poking at it for 5 years. So what I would caution any smaller shop that doesn't have the cash flow that L&H has. We spend $7 million a year on R&D, so we have money to focus on this, and we've been spending about $500,000 a year for 5 years, and we'll probably have our first big PO, our first PO actually, this year. So that you got to understand where you're entering, and I entered a little bit early. I can afford to enter early, right? Most shops can't, and most entrepreneurs can't. So the timing of when they enter, and that's why in the Wyoming Innovative Entrepreneurs, we'll let them know when there's an actual job that needs to be done. And then I would also say to get certified, which if you're Part 50 or your AS or your NQA1, that for a shop like mine is going to cost. It's going to cost $1.5 million, $2 million in about 2 years, 1 to 2 years if I rush it. So that's no joke, right? You have to have work behind that. So we figure we need to have about $6 million worth of workflow behind that certification. But when you go to these nuclear guys, they're like, no, go get the certification and then come talk to us. Don't fall for that. They will break you, right? Because the work will come way after that. So the nuclear companies do have work that doesn't require those certifications, the NQA1 and the Part 50. Have them start working with you, make sure that you've got deal flow going, and then get those higher levels of certification. So it's any work is no joke. You can just take this work. Even compared to NASA. NASA wants everything documented. When we made those parts for NASA, they literally wanted every part, the hole depths, the finishes on the holes, things that didn't matter at all. We had to document every piece of that. They wanted stacks and stacks of paperwork. So you take that for nuclear, take that times 5. So but they will pay for it, and you have to charge them for that, right? And same with NASA. When we went to work for NASA, they're like, we are going to be painful for you. Make sure you charge us for it, because we don't want you going broke halfway through this job. That would be really bad for all of us, right? Nuclear is the same way. So just make sure that you build that in and you have clear expectations on the paperwork. But as far as building the parts, the one job we're tangled into, we had to outsource quite a bit of it because the machines that we need to do it were unfamiliar to us. and they're in a rush, and we don't have time to buy the machines. So BWXT did us a huge solid, and they held our hand. They introduced us to the vendors that already do this stuff. I mean, they were amazing, absolutely amazing in having us enter this business. So having a friend like BWXT, and the state paid BWXT to be our friend and to help us, not us Wyoming manufacturers enter this, and it's paying big dividends, and we've got a seat at the table because of them. And I know not everybody's a fan of that, but that we wouldn't be where we're at as a state. L&H wouldn't be where it's at, and we would have probably already given up. But yeah, so there's a lot there. But call me if you're getting into it. You know, one of your manufacturers is getting into it. Call me. I'll let them know what to watch for and who to watch out for. As usual, there's a lot of people that are not your friends that are going to act like they're your friends for a while, and we've been in it long enough now. We know who our allies are, and happy to introduce them to anybody.
Yeah, great. Brian, how about from your perspective? I mean, what have your guys' challenges been? It's a little bit different scenario, I guess. So.
It's all scale. It's all, again, speaking as an engineer, it's like the manufacturing of the parts is I suppose the easy part, but it's the certifications, it's the knowing who you can actually talk with, who you can trust, because if we didn't have advice from several different places, we'd probably be approaching an NQA1 right now, because that's what you need in order to sell parts to BWXT. But talking with BWXT, talking with people at, the Energy Authority, we visited, Mike mentioned that BWXT, held our hands through quite a few things. They literally gave us the PO, gave us the drawings, and said, you must buy material from these two suppliers. That seems like not that big of a deal, but it's a huge deal, because they get exactly the material that they want to test, but then we don't have to do all that background work on, can I trust this supplier? Are they going to be able to provide what we need on the timelines that we need? And then we provided feedback to BWXT that said, hey, this one supplier that you have, they're awesome. They gave us everything that we needed, all the certs, like it was easy. This other supplier gave us what we needed, they weren't so it's mutually beneficial. But the big challenges were, I guess, like not as challenging because we had somebody to help along the way. We're hopeful that we can continue those relationships. But I think the big things that we look forward to is like certifications. What do we need? We're working towards ISO. We haven't needed that. The firearms industry, it's not required. But those things help you, and we can spend the money to get ISO certified. We're too small of a company to spend $1 million to get NQA1 certified right now. Maybe in the future, as these projects grow, I mean, even just the volume of the graphite alone is enough to grow exponentially. Multiple businesses, like huge. So I think, like I said, our challenge is probably just certs, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
And with the certs, it's deal flow. If somebody brought you $5 million a year worth of deal flow, okay, give us a year, we'll have the certs. But it depends on the margins on that $5 million, right? But
but that's a good point too. Is again going from smallish manufacturer, small to medium-sized manufacturer, and then basically being handed a $5 million contract. That's great and all, but hey, we need 10 machines in order to keep up with that contract. So cash flow in order to get those machines, while you're also trying to get those certs at the same time, also while a customer is kind of breathing down your neck because they want their parts. So it's kind of a managing your timeline. For high-vis, we're working with large OEMs. We're working with the large gun manufacturers, Ruger, Smith & Wesson, all them. We know them well, they know us well, so the relationship is there. The business just kind of flows. We try to be innovative when we can. There's only so much you can innovate on firearms, particularly firearm sites. So you look to other markets, but with that is growing into a completely unknown, environment. And so
one thing you're going to want is a separate company, separate legal company, so you don't smear the NQA1 stuff onto your high-vis stuff, right? We're going through that right now. We already had Evercore set up, but the NQA1 needs to be ran on a separate company so that you don't put all of those quality things on top of the work that doesn't need it.
Yeah, and we're actually talking about that transition right now in the company of like, when does this make sense?
Right.
You know, and because you're right, it just kind of has to be. Why am I going to put all that burden on this small company that, you know, isn't necessary? Let them keep doing their thing, and then let us get into this other environment. So that's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing that becomes obvious very quickly is your quality inspectors for the nuclear will have to be in that other company, right? That's really the main rule, is the quality inspectors can't work for high-vis and be doing the quality. Everybody else can. The CEO can be on both, and the CFO can be on both, but the quality person has to be on that other company.
Yeah, great.
I know we have a quality person in the audience.
Well, great. Yeah, you mentioned, so for those of you who don't know, NQA is nuclear quality assurance, and it's a standard that companies can achieve that sort of helps them demonstrate their ability to meet the requirements of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission for quality assurance. But like I think you alluded to earlier, not every piece involved with a nuclear project requires that certification. So there are levels to this. Those pieces that are very safety critical, those are the ones that require that very strict certification process. There's a number of other parts of that equation that we're very, very familiar with here in Wyoming. The rest of the balance of plant, the power conversion system, all of that that does not require that same level of certification. And then also it goes all the way down to there's a local Gillette company that won the award to do the initial dirt work and site work at the TerraPower facility. So there's when we're talking about like sort of the supply chain opportunities for Wyoming in these projects, it's not just these specific kind of things. It's fencing, it's janitorial. It covers across the board. So that's what makes it a really intriguing value proposition for the state. There's opportunities across these large projects that they're very good for our companies.
TerraPower is in that right now. They're looking, they're sourcing porta potties and tents and just stuff that anybody could do that decides to. So
on the certification, one thing I just wanted to cover real quick too, because you guys mentioned, a big part of this industry. It's, as I work a lot industry-wide across the country, I'm finding it's still, it's a very niche industry still, although it's, hundreds of thousands of people work in this industry, but it's still pretty niche, right? And relationships matter, and meeting people at a conference or whatever that kind of starts this, and you find these first opportunities and then you build upon that. But Mike, I think you're familiar with the commercial grade dedication process. I don't know if you can talk about a little more in depth on kind of the work that you're starting to look at, and maybe how that would play a role in between where you are now and then getting maybe further certifications down the road.
Yeah, so BWXT brought us this project. It was a plant that was being put back online, a light water plant, so a big one, 60-year-old plant that they were shutting down, and then they realized, the government realized that we can't have that shut down, we got to turn it back on. So now they were working on turning it back on, and there was this part that BWXT knew we could make, and they couldn't get this part. They can't start this plant back up without this part, really high value stuff. And so they came to us, and of course we didn't go get our NQA1 because we didn't know what the deal flow was. And then they plopped this in our lap, and so then you have to do commercial grade dedication, which means that the plant, Palisades, will be responsible for the quality. They're hiring somebody else to watch our quality, to do the quality piece. And they will only do that when they don't have any other choice. In this, they don't have another choice. But while they're doing that, I know that these control rods fit L&H, and I know we want to be in this business. So I will set up, simultaneously, I'll be hiring and setting up my own NQA while we're doing the commercial grade dedication, which means they're responsible for the quality, and they could hire anybody to do it. They just have to watch it and do all the quality work. So I will do both simultaneously over the next year and a half, 2 years. And also, when we, as soon as we get the prototypes done, the first 5 done, this will be a huge deal, because I don't think there's been another company that's set up to do control rods or drums since the 70s. It's been a long time. So this will make news, and we will get other opportunities for that same thing, because there's hundreds of these plants that need to come back online around the world. So we'll become those guys, and that's how it works, right? But I didn't see that coming when I got into this, but that's just how R&D works, right? You're working on one thing, and then this other thing shows up, and it's like, oh, that's even better. Let's do that instead, and then you react to it. But yeah, commercial grade dedication gets you into it, and now's the time for that, because right now they literally didn't have another company that would take this on for them, because the nuclear industry is really busy, and they were not prepared for being busy. So this is where you get an opportunity where hey, I'll hold your hand, I will show you how to do this, I'll introduce you to my vendors, and I'll pay you a lot of money to do it so that you can afford to set up and do it. That window will close. That's not a permanent window. It's always a short window, but one of my rewards for being too early into this industry is this.
Yeah. So next question here, we'll do maybe a couple more, and then I want to leave a good amount of time for questions from you guys if you have them. So do you guys think, do you think Wyoming vendors have any inherent advantages or disadvantages over other states or regions in the U.S.? Do you think there's anything particular about, working in Wyoming that gives you a leg up or otherwise?
Yeah, I think Mike touched on it earlier. Work ethic is a big thing. Finding talent sometimes is challenging, but generally the workers have pretty good work ethic. And being in a small community isn't a bad thing either. There's, I started my career in Denver in mostly medical device, and medical device is fairly small as well for as large as the industry is. People know everybody. But moving to Wyoming, it was surprising to me, and maybe this is just high-vis, but I don't think so, at how many handshake deals still kind of happen, where it's like you have a conversation and all of a sudden you're doing this job or you're doing this business. And so, being small isn't a bad thing as far as population goes and everything like that. So big advantage is potentially being small and having, good work ethic.
Yeah, I double click on the work ethic. The culture in Wyoming breeds people that want to fix things, and you have to change your own tire. When you're in Phoenix, you can call somebody to change your tire and call somebody to do everything. So they're just used to not having to do anything. Here, if you're growing up as a kid, you got to make your own way. You got to figure it out yourself. You got to build things yourself, fix your own cars. That's not normal in the rest of the world. So that makes it to where our people are growing up already knowing how to fix things and having a good work ethic, and then getting them to go to work earlier, which is normal around here. So we used to say that our best hands were ranch kids, grew up doing chores, but it's really just the growing up doing chores. It has nothing to do with them being on a ranch. The people that give their kids chores and have them change their own tire and do their own things, do that kid a real favor. The other advantage to being in Wyoming is the trust. So there's a lot of handshake deals, and I deal globally, and I have for 25 years. And the United States is trusted in the world. If you're from the United States, they just assume that you're going to do what you said you're going to do. The Midwest is even higher level of that, right? So you're from the Midwest, that's even better than being on the East or West Coast, right? We trust you more. Or Texas has a bad reputation of untrustworthy people. And so Wyoming is like the pinnacle of that, right? If you're from Wyoming, once they're like, where is that? It's right here in the middle, or right there. Oh, okay, well, your handshake's good enough, right? That is not a small deal in today's world, right? We're having that trust built in because of where we're at is huge, and it's a huge advantage for me being from the U.S. and being from Wyoming. And then one final thing, why an entrepreneur should be here. I don't know how many entrepreneurs we have in the audience, but entrepreneurs are by design the freest people in the world. And the USA is the freest country in the world, and Wyoming is the freest state in the USA. Maybe Alaska could give us a run for our money, but we're dang close. So, you know, as an entrepreneur in Wyoming, I'm the freest person in the world, and that's pretty cool. That's why I stay as an entrepreneur. That's why my business isn't for sale, and I keep doing it. So, yeah.
Great. Maybe one last one before we get to audience questions. You know, looking ahead 5, 10, however many years you want to look out, you know, what does success look like for your company within the nuclear industry?
I'll start because I'll probably be short. We're just starting into it. I mean, it's so rewarding to see what's available to us, and we're in one little tiny sector of this. Like, graphite is what we're focused on right now. If there's other things that we could do, that's great. But we see so many opportunities for our company just in what we're doing right now. I'm eager to hear what Mike has to say, but like 5, 10 years from now, HiViz could be 10x the company that it is. It may be, you know, HiViz manufacturing, it may be, you know, some other company, whatever, but the opportunity that we see is very large. So, yeah.
Yeah, so this, this is a multifaceted question to me because I'm running the Innovative Entrepreneurs, which is for Wyoming, and then I'm running Evercore, which is for Wyoming. But I'll start with L&H. So this one job that we're tangled into, it's around a $70 million job. We do $120 million a year, so a $70 million job is 5 times bigger than the biggest job we've ever had. So that's one job, and there is a lot more of these. So you're talking about 10x. I think that's very possible that nuclear could be hundreds of millions per year and high margins for quite a while. And so that's L&H, and I never want one customer to be over 20% of my sales. So I'm probably a little uncomfortable if nuclear turns into over 50% of my sales, just that industry. I'll probably hold it back a little bit or do something, because then if you hit a downturn, it's, you know, you guys know. So anyway, yeah, it could be 20-30% of my sales and be hyper growth and 10xing the company. I really like the margins. I like the fact that it fits, and I like the fact that it's innovating energy. For Evercore, my dream is that, especially on the microreactors, but I would even say on the SMRs, that anybody that's building these can call Wyoming and get 3 quotes for every part in that. I would really love if those people like Radiant were in Wyoming and building those reactors here. That would be awesome, in my opinion. I know not everybody shares that opinion. That's fine. But you know, as far as manufacturing parts and being the leader in energy, having Wyoming be the leader in energy, and then Evercore. My dream in Evercore is to be buying $1 billion a year worth of microreactors and placing those in mines and mineral processing globally. Have that anchored in Wyoming. Have that company owned in Wyoming. And if you take $1 billion a year and let's say it's a 10 or a 20-year triple net type of lease, you can imagine, I mean, that gets to be a very big number very quickly that can compete with coal, oil, and gas revenues. And then don't tax that company while we're growing it, but have your eye on it that, hey, if coal, oil, and gas can win coal, oil, and gas, I don't know if that'll ever happen, but if it ever happens, then we can pivot to this company and we can have it paying our taxes so we don't have to. And that is completely doable. We could set that up. The money's out there to get it, and that doesn't have to be done in Wyoming, but it has to be done in the United States of America. It's a matter of national security, and our competitors are Russia and China, and that's really what got me started on this. You know, they're already offering that. A world full of Russia and Chinese nuclear power plants is not a good world for the free world. So that's really important. We can do it here, not if we continue playing politics, but we can do that here if we choose to. And if not, we'll do it somewhere else. It's fine.
Well, even if they don't care this talk's more economic based. I was wondering, well, specifically about geology, but as Wyoming whole, what do we think the future drought outlook? Like, I know we're talking about it's going to be big, but we don't have like the specific numbers. Can you guys give us like a specific status on how you think, how many more job opportunities will be open for people in this field?
Yeah, I mean, I know I've heard kind of more broadly at nuclear conferences and things like that, sort of across the industry. It's pretty well acknowledged that there's quite literally hundreds of thousands of jobs that are going to be a big gap in the industry. I would say that is and that's spread across a number of different things. The uranium industry, mining side of things in particular, is going to be quite a bit smaller than that. Wayne might have some better intel on that. So I can't give you, I guess, like direct numbers, but I know, in talking to our uranium producers, they are all ramping back up. I know they are all competing very heavily for workforce, geologists, radiation safety officers, all sorts of technicians. So yeah, I mean, there's strong demand there, and those operators are starting to, like UR Energy, for example, is expanding into another operation. So, each time that happens, that requires, that much more staffing. So, without giving you a direct answer, I guess I would say it's a very exciting place, especially as a young person finishing your studies and looking at the workforce. It is in high demand.
Environment is supportive of,
Mhm.
to.
Mhm.
How do we do that? What does that look like?
Yeah, you have to be very welcoming. So there's this consent-based siting, which is what the NRC, I think, DOE, the DOB adopted that years ago, and that whole debacle happened with the repository that they had in Yucca Mountain. And what they say is, if you don't want it here, and that's, if it's the people don't want it, the government doesn't, if anybody doesn't want it, they won't bring it, right? That's their promise. And so if there's any publicity going on, even if it's political theater going on that's negative, they'll just stay away. They'll just go away. We witnessed it happen, right? And they're very sensitive. It doesn't take much to get them to go away. So you have to not do that political theater. And I'm not a politician, but I'm running around to all these politicians saying, would you please stop that? You're ruining a massive opportunity and a lot of work we've done. So just stop. You don't have to say those things because it's already in the consent-based siting. That's already the rule. And when you say those things, what people that I'm trying to attract here is, we don't like nuclear, and they also hear that you don't have a high energy IQ when it comes to nuclear. So they don't feel wanted. So this is unlike every other energy industry. These guys are very sensitive to not being wanted, and they'll just stay away. So people need to appreciate that. And I'm not a huge, I don't know how this works when you need every person's approval and blessing to do energy. I don't think there's any time in history that's ever been true. I was around when the coal mines came to Gillette, and when I was told at that time from my dad that when the oil and gas guys came, that all the ranchers were like, stay away from here, we don't want this change, right? But then the coal came in, and guess what? The oil and gas guys and the ranchers got together, and they're like, we don't want this change, right? It was very loud. And if you would have had to satisfy and get everybody to say, no, we do want it, and we'll ask everybody and get everybody's opinion, we wouldn't have coal. We would not have oil and gas. And those guys weren't as sensitive. These nuclear guys are very sensitive to negative publicity, and they will go away. And it's okay for me. I'm fine. I'm good. I got plenty of other stuff. It's not good for Wyoming. It's not good for the United States. So, yeah, it's just It's an impossible ask, I know, because a lot of people just want to use it as a talking point. But so I don't know the solution, but I'm very interested in anybody that does. And I'm also interested to talk to the people that, if they truly are just scared of nuclear, it's the cleanest, safest energy, period, by far, and has been for its entire existence. So anybody that's interested in the truth, I'd love to, introduce them to the people that can prove that to them. The evidence and the truth is on the side of it, but yeah, that's what I'm dealing with.
I'll add just a little bit of, I think, context that's important to me, because I mean, obviously there's been a lot of dialogue around the nuclear growth and its potential projects here, and it's worth acknowledging that nuclear is a very specific, interesting, complicated past, right? I mean, if you watched Oppenheimer, you followed this industry, you know that like literally nuclear science was developed, the Manhattan Project here in the U.S. and was revolved around weapons development. And so there is through World War II and the Cold War following, there's certainly a lot of things that the industry and could have done better, right? And so I think it's very fair that there's a lot of questions, right? But that's what's been, to me, which has been really inspiring, is seeing this like process, right? Things like this, Casper College opening up this room, having you all out here and having a discussion like this, and having a lot of these. So getting the public participation and having these, I think, is really helpful into understanding a really complex industry.
My name is Stuart Mackenzie, and I'm an archaeologist who for many years worked on surveys around Wyoming, mainly for the energy industry, for people putting pipelines in, whatever it may be. But I've also been involved in civil surveying as well. And one of the things, I have no reservations, and I always wanted to be an archaeologist since I was a child. When the time came to choose, my dad said that's a ridiculous idea. So I became an engineer. And early on, one of the courses I did was in 1967 was the engineering application of computers, which didn't mean much then actually. But I was working for a company who did instrumentation for Concorde. And I have no reservations about your guys' ability to do the right thing. Barnes Wallace, who was the chief engineer for Concorde, was asked if he used computers, and he said, no, they're too slow, I just use the slider. Huh. So you can design Concorde with a slider. You can make an atomic bomb with the lathes and equipment that was available in the 1940s. So you should have no trouble. But the trouble is the people further down the line, as demonstrated in 3 Mile Island, which was people not believing that things could go so wrong so quickly. And in Rocky Flats, where people decided they didn't really need to bother to change the filters. And all the way down the line, eventually people will abuse the system. And they don't even have to be corrupt or benefiting. They will abuse the system for no good reason. It's crazy. So I've seen in Wyoming a pipeline that was supposed to be 12 foot deep, and it was 6 foot deep, and within the gas running, the whole thing blew up. And a similar thing at Wyoming Boulevard and 2nd Street, they hit a huge water line, which on the plans was at 12 feet, but it was actually at 6 feet, and the whole area was flooded for about 3 weeks. So this is my question. What are you going to do about the people that are involved in these activities and the fact that even in Wyoming, and I've actually been told on occasions when someone was doing something very dubious and I said, I'm not going to do that, they said to me, you have to understand how we do things in Wyoming. You don't know about our culture. And the fact is that I believe in honesty and integrity, and that is what they were dismissing. And that is something that we have to beware of in this country, is that we can't, in everything we do, it's your honour, and you were talking about that, your honour, integrity, it has to be restored.
I love that.
So how does an engineer fix that?
Yeah, I love that question. I'll take it first, and then you can jump in there. So, number one, my son is an anthropologist. He's an anthropologist here, so he's got his own Barron CRC. So he does the same thing you're talking about. Goes out and observes sites, and also looks at the nature of human beings, right? So he asks very interesting questions like that as well. And it is a very interesting question. And thanks to this guy named Admiral Rickover. Are you familiar with this guy? So he was a Navy guy that did he brought he's the one that made nuclear so safe, right? It's Admiral Rickover. And he's the reason that part I'm making for the nuclear power plant is going to cost $1 million instead of $100,000 because of the quality levels that he requires, because of exactly what you're talking about, and that is you can't trust people to do the right thing, right? You've got to have a lot of these redundancies built in and these fail-safes built in. So you literally have to, so the way BWXT puts it is when they're building this Project Pele microreactor for the military, they're building it to where you can literally release 3 untrained 18-year-old boys on that reactor and not have an accident. You know, think about that. I mean, you're hiring these 3 18-year-old boys who've probably been gaming their whole life, and you're giving them a brand new reactor to run the power for their people. And they have to be able to do that safely, and they can do it safely, right? It's one of the reasons it costs so much. But I believe, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Admiral Rickover is the reason that nuclear is the safest, cleanest energy, period. Now, I'm not saying that when they're building bombs, when you talk about the Manhattan Project, they made a mess, right? That was World War II. That was a bomb, not a nuclear reactor, and so that that happens, and but it doesn't happen in that. It doesn't happen in nuclear nearly as much as it happens in all of the other energies. So if you look at all of the other energies, the only one that comes close to the safety and environmental of nuclear is solar, and it even kills a few more people than nuclear. So it's all a matter of how safe do you need to be, and because of the human psyche has an incredible fear of radiation, and it has an incredible fear of nuclear energy. And because of that, and because of Admiral Rickover, it's been unsafe. And even 3 Mile Island was that plant failed the way it was supposed to. It was working as designed. When I watched that 3 Mile Island, that was a terrible leadership and communication problem, right? That was not as scary as it was made out to be on the left out there. That person that was running that and communicating was not communicating. It was terrible leadership. But yeah, the reactors are completely safe. Even these the storage of the fuel is incredibly safe, and we can keep it that way, and we need to keep it that way. And we also need to work on the rest of these energies and make them that safe. And you do that by putting these multiple safety things in. So when these designs in reactors aren't new, they're from the 50s and 60s. What's new is the technology, the computers, the sensors, the internet, now the AI that we can put over the top of that. And this TRISO fuel plant that's going up in Gillette, the safety of that that fuel is incredibly safer than the old stuff. So even though it's the safest, cleanest period, that's not good enough. We're going to keep making it safer. So the reason I'm so bullish on nuclear is, one, you can fuel it and run it 5 or 10 years. So if you're talking about the nuclear forward positions right now, half of the people that get killed in combat are killed on the fuel trucks hauling fuel to our generators. Wow. So when we put a microreactor in there, we've already saved an amazing amount of lives. And when we do that with other things, but we're going to need all of these energies. So I'm not picking one energy against the other. I'm just saying that it's incredibly safe. We can keep it safe. We can make it even safer. And it's going to be systems and controls, and now with monitoring and new fuels and new steel, it just gets easier every day. And then I have a monitoring system called OptiIQ that I put on crushers and stuff, and all of these nuclear plants will have it, where we can see, and multiple people can get a text and look at their phone and see that this thing's operating safely, or it's not, and it's starting, whoever's running it is not running it right. But yeah, it'll be safe, and if it's not, I won't do it. It'll be safer than everything else, which is good enough for me. But yeah.
I'll just add a kind of a specific example that I learned of, visiting some reactors around the country, and it's a very interesting culture, because nuclear is unlike anything else. It has this baggage around it, the examples you brought up. So we had a chief nuclear officer from one of the big utilities sharing an anecdote about, forever he shared a story of being on an airplane. He's like, people start small chat with you or whatever. And he said forever he was just like, he would do everything in his power to avoid telling people that he was in the nuclear industry. He'd be like, I'm an engineer, like, oh, what do you work on? Whatever. Finally, he'd kind of get there. That's because for decades now, following 3 Mile Island and all of that experience, the industry kept moving along. I mean, kept providing really reliable power, but the industry was largely sort of, no news is good news. Keep your head down, do your job. That's it, right? And so that culture had been in there, but as it's been really interesting to see now, finishing up his anecdote, he was kind of saying, now it's exciting to be able to tell people like why nuclear energy is important and why it's great, and all of its attributes and things like that. But one of the things I learned about in doing these tours and stuff was following 3 Mile Island. There's a creation of this organization called INPO, which is the Institute of Nuclear Power Reactors, and it's we have the Nuclear Regulatory Commission that is the independent regulator that ensures safety to people and the environment of anything to do with radioactivity, really. So I mean, they have some purview over hospitals and things like that as well. But so that's the independent regulator, and they have certain standards, that everybody has to meet to be licensed and be able to operate. What INPO did, following the experience with 3 Mile Island, is set up this organization and a system that their primary goal is they strive for excellence. Like within their realm, if you're just above the NRC requirements, like you've got a lot of work to do. But it's interesting because they share, you think about, like, especially within certain regions or stuff where utilities are more competitive than in other parts of the country, but they share people from their companies into other plants. And so they go and, they're proud of their own plant, right? So when they go into another plant, they're looking for anything that they can call out of that other plant. So I just thought it was really, really interesting example of there's been, some less than ideal scenarios that have occurred, and certainly a lot of, environmental impact from particularly the Cold War activities and all of that. But it's also been a great learning experience, and so they've taken that and set up these institutes, and there's a worldwide one as well. It's WANO. There's so many acronyms, but similar situation. They share people. It's sharing best practices and excellence, and so and I think that's important because nuclear is unlike anything else where, God forbid, tomorrow there's some sort of accident in Bangladesh. I think they're just constructing their plants, so I don't know if it would happen there. But you know what I mean? Like, it affects everything, right? The entire global nuclear landscape. And so it's in those companies' best interest to be, very, very, very safe in how they do things. And that's, to Mike's point, that's why these, the regulations are so stringent. That's why it's got pretty high upfront costs, and those things is to ensure that. So.
Do we have more questions? Let's see if anybody else has one before I circle back. First time?
I probably don't need the mic.
Maybe for my recording you do.
You want to tell me?
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you. This is for Mike. With the TerraPower plant being constructed, has L&H seen any opportunities in the supply chain regarding that particular plant? I don't know if people, maybe they overlook, they forget that's simply a pilot plant.
Right.
And if it's a raging success,
Yep.
there might not be another one here, but there'll be another one elsewhere. So I just wondered if you've been following it, how, if you see any opportunities there.
I do see some opportunities there. They were required by the, what was the DOE that gave them $4 billion. They were required to hire big EPC companies that they have their own vendors. So although we're connected and I'm talking to them, I really like those guys. They're amazing. The first one, they've kind of got tied up in this bureaucratic stuff that doesn't fit me really well. But my friend that does the dirt work up there, he got the dirt work, which was amazing. And that's leading him into another one. And I have been in contact with him, I've quoted him. It feels like we're gonna get something. We haven't got any POs yet, but Tyler Miller with Earthworks got the PO to do all the dirt work. And now they drug him into 2 or 3 other things, so. And when they're done with this DOE $4 billion worth of funding, they told me that they're not gonna go back with the big EPCs. They're gonna get lean and mean, and that makes more room for people like us to jump in, a smaller company to jump in and build parts. And I think this control rod, us winning this control rod, they're gonna look at us with a whole different set of eyes once they hear that, because they need vendors. And we talked about pressure vessels. There's a North American Ford just trying to set up to do pressure vessels, but those guys in South Korea, they play dirty to keep that from happening. They're playing real dirty. So we got to cure that if we want big, heavy manufacturing in the U.S. I'm not into that. I mean, I like global, but there's some of these things that we're just going to have to do in the U.S.
So this question is for both of you as manufacturers. It's my understanding that there are smaller reactors that are going to be available at some point all the way up to the TerraPower and even bigger. So you folks as manufacturers, do you make parts to size, to scale for the smaller reactors as well as the bigger reactors?
So the project that we worked on was the Banner project for BWXT, and that was their microreactor. But by microreactor, those still use like 80 tons of graphite in there. So like that's still large scale. I mean, that would keep us busy for years, or at least months. So I guess that's the best way I can answer your question is like, yeah, we look at it completely, but we were building something to scale. It was a test part. It isn't going to go into a reaction, but yeah. And then to that, maybe a speaking point would be that, we won that project with BWXT, but then all of a sudden, once they heard that we could do certain things, we're getting little projects from them on the side. For us, it might not be worth it for L&H to pick up a project that's worth $10,000, $20,000, but for us, that builds our company, so, yeah.
Yeah, so I work on the biggest machines on earth. So I've got a machine that you could take this room and put it on my machine and turn it in 5-axis millet. So we're definitely on the big stuff. Now, why am I in the big stuff? Because that's where the margins are. So since the beginning, you got to get the bigger stuff that not very many people have, so that you can make money. If I'm doing stuff this size, I'm going to get killed. Somebody's going to put a machine in their garage and do it for free on the weekends, right? That changes when you have nuclear. So I can now, anybody else can do something this size, and instead of paying $8 for it, they're going to pay you $80,000 for it because of the amount of paperwork and the accuracy and the tracking that it takes. So yes, I will do the small stuff for nuclear, and I'll do it for space, and I'll do it for hydro because they have those high-end specifications. So those customers that really need everything perfect, they need perfect documentation. It has to be exactly what material you said it was, and you have to be able to prove that. Those are my customers, and I'll set up smaller machines for them. And then I like the big stuff just because it's cool. So.
All right, I'm going to just close. So we have just a couple of minutes. I'm going to wrap this up here right now, and then these gentlemen will be here for a few minutes while they're packing up their things, so feel free to come ask a question. For our learning series, Dr. Cosine asked us, a team of us, to come up with needs in our community around our state and looking towards the future of Wyoming. So we've asked for your feedback. We treasure your feedback. We look at your feedback. Jared sent feedback forms around. You can either use the QR code on there, or you can write on the back and give us your thoughts. We look at all of those. We did just today as we plan for the next 2. So the end of January, second half of January, and February, we're going to do a 2-part series on taxes. I know, that's a real barn burner. But it is really of interest and to all of us in Wyoming, and so we'll invite our representatives back to take a bullet or a whipping if they don't do what's right. No, I'm kidding. We might actually call Bill and say, would you come be on our panel? So I appreciate that. So thank you all for being here. Your feedback is super important to us. So if you wouldn't mind taking a minute, you can leave them on the end of the tables. We'll pick those up. But we thank you for coming out in the dark, going home in the dark, coming in the dark, going home in the dark. Welcome to Wyoming. Thank you for being here. Have a good night. Sean, thank you so much. It was good to have you.